up, everyone? Welcome back to C&D Sports. The month of December is here, so we have our NHL Power Rankings for December. So we're going to start from 32, work our way up to 1 as usual. So without further ado, our resident hockey expert, Dan, is going to carry this video here. So at 32, Dan, who do we have?
So the headline here is you give Ottawa some expectations and yet again they disappoint. And that's who we have at 32. I don't know what to say about this team. Of course, they went through some players missing some games because of COVID. So they had some games postponed. Some players were out for extended periods. Matt Murray gets waived and now Forsberg and Gustafsson is their tandem. And then outside of a few, like a small group of players, everybody's just underperforming, including Tim Stützle. And it's not going to fly for this season. I think they're going to have to continue to develop. I don't think they should bring in any pieces or like guys like Zach Sanford, I think are guys they can move on from, focus on the young core, and when they're ready to strike, bring in those types of players. They're just not there yet. And above them at 31, we have Montreal. And everything about this team has kind of been underwhelming. Actually, I would say disappointing. They've heavily underperformed. Despite losing Weber and Price, you still expect more from this team. And outside of Jake Allen, there's nothing about this team I would be happy about. And after all the firings, I think they're on the right track in restructuring and rebuilding this team. So we'll see what's next for them. I think a team that should follow suit and who we have at 30 are the Vancouver Canucks. And I don't know what's going on in Vancouver. Alongside Ottawa, they have been probably the most disappointing team in hockey so far. Miller, Hughes, and Garland are looking okay. Outside of that, everybody's been very mediocre at best. Peterson, Horvat, and Besser need to be a lot better. And outside of that, like if they don't, they have no shot at rising this list, and they're going to be another team competing for the draft.
You drew those similarities with them and Montreal, and you get a sense of change in Montreal because there have been big changes made, whereas in Vancouver, it's, ownership is meeting with Jim Benning and nothing happens. And it's just a whole lot of ambiguity around Vancouver right now. And at this point in the season, a team that had playoff hopes and that, in our earlier power rankings and earlier predictions, we had them in the playoff hunt and possibly making the playoffs. But there's just no sense of direction at all. Like it's one of those things where, maybe they could rise, maybe they couldn't rise, but there's no clear direction. At least with a team like Ottawa and Montreal, it's okay. They're just bad. Whereas Vancouver, they've got so much talent. They're supposed to be so good, and there is no direction at all.
The issue is, along with all that, they sold their cap space they would have had this offseason to get Garland and Ekman-Larsson. I like Garland. Ekman-Larsson isn't worth the contract, though Arizona retained some cap. It wasn't enough to justify that contract in Vancouver. So I don't know where they go from here, what they move out, who they fire, but there are moves to be made, and they have to be made this season. They can't continue on with this. And anyways, at 29, we have the New York Islanders. And of course, another team hurt by COVID. Sorokin and Nelson are good. Everybody's either been hurt or underperformed. I don't know how they bounce back, though. Although they have Barry Trotz in that excellent system, I think not only have teams caught on, but the Metro's so deadly, it's going to be tough to climb your way through that. It's possible, but I don't have the highest of hopes for the Islanders. And Varlamov hasn't been Varlamov since returning from injury. So I'm not sure what to expect. And you can no longer blame their road stretch, as they are currently 0-4 at home. So I'm not sure where they head from here. They should rise, but I can't guarantee that.
I think Trotz has to be on the hot seat.
And It's tough. I don't know. I don't know who to blame for this, because if anybody's going to pull them out, it would be Barry Trotz. Maybe I would give him the season. I wouldn't fire him yet because they have had a lot of obstacles this season. But that's a discussion that is rational. I just don't think it should be in discussion yet.
Fair enough.
28, we have the Buffalo Sabres, and the magic is finally running out. They're getting to where we expect them to be. I think they should be getting lower. So this is currently still them exceeding expectations, being at 28 opposed to 31 or 32. Craig Anderson is continuing to play well. So if he has any say in it, maybe they rise, but I think it's downhill for Buffalo, and it should be. The same with Arizona at 27. They've had a bit of a resurgence, and it's not so much Gostisbehere. He's been playing well throughout the season. He was a point a game to start the season off, but the rest of the team's hard work is finally paying off, and they're catching up as a whole. And surprisingly, the tandem in Wedgwood and Vejmelka has been very stable for them, stealing games. And again, it's the hard work that's getting them these wins. And if teams can't keep up or catch up, Arizona is going to steal those wins, and they have so far. At 26, we have the Seattle Kraken. And I don't know which ranking had them high throughout the season, but they've generally been top 10 for this one listing. And the reason being is their advanced stats from the start of the season have been the best in the NHL. So now the performance on ice, as the chemistry is built, is catching up. So they are getting some wins, and they are slowly rising up this list. How high they get, I'm not sure, but I still think they can climb. And of course, there's still ways to go with them being a new franchise, a lot of moving parts and pieces they have to make work. But Seattle's headed in the right direction for an expansion team. The Chicago Blackhawks at 25, they're finally getting things together after a rough start and just a lot going on in the franchise. I think overall, the team needs to be better. They should be better considering what they've put together on paper. But you never know with a veteran team like that. They did take a gamble on Seth Jones, and they still are young in other ways too. So I'm not sure if they'll continue around here, whether they drop or raise. We did expect them to be in the playoff hunt, so you want them to rise, but not sure whether or not that'll happen. Another team that's dropped, Philadelphia at 24. And this has been a story of, well, where's the goal support? Defense has been somewhat stable. Goaltending's been great with Martin Jones and Carter Hart. And that's been the story for Philadelphia, is once they get that goaltending, you would expect them to be in the push for playoffs, but they just aren't scoring goals. JVR, Couturier, pretty much all their forwards, except maybe Joel Farabee, they've all been quiet. And because of that, I mean, they're just not getting wins at all. And that's caused them to fall quite a bit. If they climb back in again, they're in a similar situation to the Islanders, as they should, but they're in the toughest division in the NHL. So we'll see where they head from here. It should only be up considering what they have on paper, but there's no guarantees in this league. At 23, we have the Los Angeles Kings. Though Peterson's been a little disappointing, Jonathan Quick looks back in playoff form. He's playing well. One of the best versions of regular season Jonathan Quick we've seen. And I think along with Anze Kopitar, the vets have been showing up, but they still are a developing team. So I'm not sure how high they climb. I think a lot of their wins have been from a top-heavy standpoint, relying on guys, again, like Jonathan Quick and Kopitar, and even Victor Arvidsson. But for them to rise this list, I think their young guys and their depth need to be stronger. So for now, we'll keep them at 23. I see them dropping, but with a young core that can step up, they may rise. A team I see falling off, who we have at 22, are the New Jersey Devils, and that's where the spot for the Philadelphia Flyers and the Islanders lie. Is New Jersey falling off? Their goaltending is fantastic, but they're relying way too much on Andreas Janssen and Jesper Bratt. I don't know if that's going to continue to work. Now, Jack Hughes has returned from injuries, and that should help, but I don't know if that'll be enough for them to squeak into the playoffs.
Right.
So I can see New Jersey continuing their slow fall.
Overall, a good week for New Jersey, though, with locking up Jack Hughes for 8 years. Just a little side note there.
I mean, that is an expensive contract, so
we'll see. We'll see how that works out.
At 21, we have the Detroit Red Wings, and they've had some magic in some games, but they have a lot of loser points, and that's where they're a little lower than their points say they are. The rookies have all shown up. Larkin, Bertuzzi look fantastic. The goaltending tandem's great. But I think, like the Kings, they're still a developing team where they have to fill in the rest of their roster to make that meaningful push. At 20, we have the Pittsburgh Penguins, and, well, you can never count them out. Now, with injuries and just aging, there is that strong possibility they drop off, but Crosby has more to give. They're still waiting on Malkin. So I have no idea where to expect this team to end up, whether it's higher or lower. I just have them at 20 because that's where I feel their performance has left them. At 19, we have the Winnipeg Jets, and this is another team that's relying on a few amount of players. Kyle Connor, Pierre-Luc Dubois, and Andrew Kopp are the only players that haven't disappointed me on this team. Connor Hellebuck has been good, but he hasn't been Vezina Connor Hellebuck yet. The rest of the team needs to be a lot better in Winnipeg. It's just been really disappointing to watch such a strong team, especially after making the right moves this offseason, bolstering that defense. They really have disappointed. At 18, we have the San Jose Sharks, and the vets have shown up. So, like, Garrett Carlson's been there, Logan Couture's been there. But I do expect some regression from guys like Timo Meier and James Reimer
because they're off to torrid starts to the year.
Yeah. So when those things balance out, I do see some sort of a drop off from San Jose with the Evander Kane situation. I would expect him to be dealt. If any team's interested, they are willing to retain half his salary, and I have no idea what comes in if he's moved. I have no idea what comes of this situation as a whole, whether it hurts or helps this team. Right now, he's with the Barracuda, their AHL affiliate. So that's something to keep your eye on because it will impact the team's performance. But for now, again, they're at 18 because they've had a solid start. Right above them, we have their rival, the Anaheim Ducks, out of California. They've been good all around, but I feel like their numbers have been inflated by loser points. So I may have them lower than most. And I mean, the rookies are there. Guys like Getzlaff and Henrique have shown up, but I don't think enough to make a meaningful push. So at this point, I'm starting to count out all the California teams as Vegas starts to rise. Edmonton and Calgary seem to have the Pacific teams locked down, and I expect a strong push from the Central teams that, again, likely take the 2 wildcard spots in the West.
Right.
So at 16, we have the Nashville Predators, and this is a team we didn't have as a surefire playoff squad after all the moves. They were looking like they're going to rebuild, but I think we both can agree from the start of the season, we expected them to be pesky, and they're playing that pesky Predator style. And then you add the fact that Matt Duchene and Ryan Johansson have been Matt Duchene and Ryan Johansson. They seem to reclaim their games, and that's really helped out these Predators. And Roman Yossi's looking like he's in Norris form again. So for Nashville, I do expect playoffs at this point because I think one of the teams in the Central we predicted, most likely the Chicago Blackhawks. I think that spot's definitely up for grabs, and Nashville's there to take it. At 15, St. Louis has really dropped off. I'm not sure how or why, what caused this. There haven't really been any injuries. There hasn't been a major drop off in goaltending. I think they just aren't dominating teams like they were at the beginning of the season, where they did have an easy schedule to start. So, after having that easy schedule, they lost to some of the stronger teams and they haven't really bounced back since. At some point, I would expect them to rise. They kind of have to. They're too good on paper, right? But whether or not they do for sure, I have no idea. So at 14, we have the Dallas Stars, and they had a really shaky start, and it's been up and down for them. Now they're on a rise, and I think that's because they found some stability in Jake Ottinger and Braden Holtby. Guys like Pavelski, Robertson, Suter, and Heiskanen have been solid for Dallas, but everybody else I feel has more to offer. So I do expect even more of a rise from Dallas, but I can't guarantee that because they've always left you wanting more, especially offensively. But if they can maintain their defense and good goaltending, I think they should be able to snuff out a playoff spot. At 13, they're getting to where we expect them, the Vegas Golden Knights. Players are slowly returning. They're still waiting on guys like Carlson and Martinez. And I guess
Eichel.
now Jack Eichel. But Stone and Pacioretty are back. And even before then, Stevenson did a great job filling in those gaps. I think they'll continue to rise. I don't see how they don't. They're too strong of a team. And again, that cap thing will always be an issue when Eichel gets back, whether or not they can make that work. But we'll see what happens as the season progresses. At 12, Columbus has been, I think, the story so far in terms of teams performing well. Because this has really come out of nowhere. Again, another team you expect to be in a rebuild after moving out guys like Seth Jones and Nick Foligno.
And firing Tortorella.
Yeah, and firing Torts, but they're having a similar reaction that Vancouver had when they fired Torts, where guys are more relaxed, they're playing their game. And Elvis has been the story for this team, along with everybody stepping it up a bit. Columbus is looking good. They've shown no signs of a drop off, but on paper, there should be one expected, I would think. Whether or not that happens for sure, though, I have no idea for Columbus, how high they can fly or how low they can fall. At 11, we have Boston. And what they are now is that typical Boston team with that good structure. They're going to win their share of games and get into the playoffs. They're likely to stay in this range, but I don't see them rising unless they get something good for DeBrusk or Taylor Hall steps up his game. Maybe both. Taylor Hall can be better. Everybody else is doing their job. The goaltending tandem has been a little disappointing. I expected a lot more from Linus Ullmark. And Jeremy Swayman has been solid. I think it's more on Ullmark as the $5 million goalie. You expect him to be putting in work for this team, but he hasn't so far. And then Jake DeBrusk requesting his trade. That totally makes sense. I just have no idea what they get for him, whether it's a third or second liner, and where he ends up. There is a lot of interest, so that is a deal I see happening. It's just a matter of what they receive. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Now we get into our top 10, kicking it off with Minnesota, who was 10 last month. And this team, to me, will go as far as Cam Talbot takes them. It's not that they're a bad team by any means, but I think guys like Ryan Hartman shouldn't be one of your top goal scorers. I think they need a little more depth. But if they continue to win games by committee, maybe they don't drop off, but I do expect a drop off to some degree from Minnesota. At 9, we have the Calgary Flames, and this is 3 spots lower than we've had them last month. And it's not at all their performance dropping off, as they did have a little dip, but it's more so teams just took that time and they've rose. Teams like Colorado and Tampa Bay, who we obviously have higher, they've stepped up and taken those spots from Calgary. I think they're doing well. I mean, you want goals a lot more from Monahan, and you probably want to rely on guys like Mangiapane and Lucic a little less. But if it's working for them, if that's what they need through this season, then why not? They continue this route and make some noise in the playoffs. I don't know. As you're getting into the top 10, these are guys you want competing for a cup, and I don't see that in Calgary yet. But stranger things have happened. Then at the 8th spot, we have the Tampa Bay Lightning. Steven Stamkos has really filled in the gap from Kucherov. Now Braden points out, I'm not sure if that causes a bit of a drop-off. But guys like Cirelli and Palat, I feel, have a lot more to give. Outside of that, Tampa Bay's been Tampa Bay, and I think they're just going to cruise to the playoffs and wait to make their noise then. Another team, although they're out of the playoffs technically, and that's more so because they have less games played. We have them at 7, the Colorado Avalanche. This is another team to watch out for. Nathan McKinnon's coming back, so that takes a huge load off of Kadri. But if Kadri keeps up this production on the second line or wherever they have him, along with McKinnon coming back, not only will they cruise to the playoffs, but they're going to be a huge threat. Now it's just a matter of Darcy Kemper finding his game, this new franchise. And once he does, I think Colorado can be far and away the best team in hockey, but things just have to go right for them.
Exactly.
At 6, we have Washington, and this is a team I originally had first for the past couple days, but I had to drop them off because they're, again, relying too much on loser points. But if Backstrom comes back and Oshie comes back, this team is going to be deadly. Another team like Colorado that's likely going to be far beyond their peers. Ovechkin is having one of the best starts in his career at the tender age of 36. It's incredible to see and to watch. Washington is probably the most fun team to follow right now. And I think they'll maintain this. They should rise again as players come back. Lars Eller is back. I think they have room to go up, despite how amazing, again, guys like Ovechkin have been so far. Now we get
into doesn't age. The guy doesn't age.
No, Russian machine doesn't break, man. At 5, we have the Florida Panthers cooling off after a really hot start. I think what fell for them is losing guys like Barkov, Sam Reinhart has been a little disappointing along with Spencer Knight, but Bobrovsky is back. And I think this team will stick around this range as they are one of the elite teams. I think it's poised for a team that's still growing and developing, losing a head coach like Joel Quenneville. It'll do it to you. And I think they're still competitive. It's just a matter of them staying consistent, and that's very possible for this team. And that's Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I think debating them lower is justified considering that they did have such an electric start to the year where it really was, you were watching how long Carolina and Florida streaks would go on for at the start of the year. But I think at the end of the day, there's such a good home team that adds a lot of value, especially to power rankings, that when you can play 41 of your games and expect to win 41 of your games, which is what Florida's playing like right now at home, I think that adds a lot. And I think I've gotten the sense over the past week and a half that they've started to figure it out. They stumbled, but I think they're starting to get their footing again, that they can consistently stay here. Obviously, everything's going to look a little disappointing when you compare it to that electric start.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think Florida is starting to regain their footing after the slight stumble that they had.
So, yeah, you're right. And Tuesday night, they had a big win against Washington, going down 4-1 into the third, coming back in regulation and eking out that win 5-4. That's a strong team they beat there, and they're showing that they still have it. It's just a matter of, like I said, that consistency. And it's a similar story for the team we have at 4 in the Carolina Hurricanes, where they did have that electric start, a bit of a drop-off, but as they get that consistency throughout the season, I think both of these teams will be pushing for top 3. Bottom for them would be top 10, but I think top 5 is a healthy range for both of them to be. I think Carolina all around is the best team in hockey, as they are playing the most complete game. Defense is good. Frederik Andersen's looking like a Vezina finalist. Their offense is deadly. They have everything you want. Again, it's just like Florida, a matter of them staying consistent. Then our top 3 are all teams that have been incredibly dominant, but there is some space between each of them. This may be high for some, but I feel like the New York Rangers have been deadly. I do expect a drop off though, but I can't discredit the performance they've had to this point. They're firing on all cylinders outside of Zibanejad, Lafreniere, and Kako. All their players have been nasty. And if these guys pull up, I think New York can stay in the top 10, if not the top 5, with Shesterkin, again, another Vezina finalist. They've just been nasty so far. At 2, they finally put it together. You think Toronto's always up and down. That's who we have at 2. Currently, I think they're the best team in hockey, at least from a dominance standpoint in these past few weeks. They've been killing their opponents. They've been winning a lot of games, but you just can't give them number 1 yet, considering the, I think, awful start they had, losing to the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins. I think that discredits them for now. Can they get to 1? Of course, they're at 2. So they're pushing there. The stars are showing up, but they still have more to give. I expect a little more out of Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews. That's always the story. And I think they'll produce. It's because they're 2 of the best players in the NHL, and they're scratching the surface. They're going to get there. They just haven't gotten there yet. Joseph Wall's been a fantastic backup in the loss of Peter Mrazek. So things are working well for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think they're where they need to be.
Just don't start planning the parade yet, Leafs fans. There's still a lot of hockey left to be played.
There's a lot of hockey left, and they need to win around. At number 1, like the Carolina Hurricanes and the Florida Panthers, they had an electric start, and they've been more consistent. The Edmonton Oilers, I think, are the best team all around when you consider everything that's happened to this point. The Edmonton Oilers have been the most balanced team. Goaltending has been fantastic with Stuart Skinner and Mikko Koskinen, despite losing Mike Smith, who they expected to be their starter this season. They've also lost Darnell Nurse, and guys like Bouchard have pulled up. Now, I'm not sure how much it hurts with them losing Cody Ceci, but I'm sure a team like Edmonton will make it work. Now, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl helps having those 2 competing for the best player in the NHL. Right now, Draisaitl has been the most dominant offensive force, and Connor McDavid's the best player in the world. So they have a lot going for them. The only thing I can pick at is Kyler Yamamoto needs to put up more points. Outside of that, Edmonton's been doing it all.
So that'll do it for our December NHL Power Rankings video. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like the video, give it a like down below. Subscribe so you don't miss any of our other uploads. Comment down below what you think of our power rankings, which teams we have too high, which teams we have too low. Let us know in the comments. And with that, we'll see you in the next video. Peace.